We are back in business strategies, class 1. This is section 2, where we get into some keys for success.
So what you need to understand is what you want to accomplish, and then you got to do it. You need to understand the legal aspects of your state. We've talked about this, but I'm going to reiterate it. You also need to make sure you're operating within the scope and always have the disclaimer, because that is like a get out of jail card. It is something where they cannot say that you were treating, that you were diagnosing, that you were claiming anything besides giving them nutritional advice based on the latest research. And just like Melissa was highlighting, it is advisable to get some type of professional license. The certification is great, but board certification and registration and a license is another layer of credibility. As one of you were talking about, it might have been Chelsea, how many people are skeptical about natural approaches. Here's the facts. There's more research about natural approaches. There's more anecdotal stories than there are about medical research. And the medical research is usually actually flawed. The way that it is done is it's funded by the people that are trying to get the drug introduced. So they have outliers that they eliminate. They also, you can make a research report show anything that you're trying to show by manipulating the data. So the natural research didn't have that agenda. They weren't trying to prove that this is going to make money for their pocketbooks. So that research actually has more double-blind, placebo-controlled, and all these different studies. Green Med Info is a great resource for you guys. Green Med Info, where you can search anything, and there's tons of research on there. That's a free resource. If you really want detailed, and I did send you an email with research links, and there's a few other, but that's where registration is important as far as credentials and getting just normal liability insurance as a backup. You might not even need it. Most natural wellness practitioners never have that issue from my experience. I haven't, but it's still good to have things covered. Incorporation is a great option because it separates your personal assets from the business. So if for some reason there is some type of liability that seizes assets, which is, again, is not likely, but you need to look at these options, then your personal assets will not be touched. So we'll look at that a little closer. And obviously getting a space is good. We have highlighted, get your niche, just like we talked about for Amy, maybe women's health. People want experts. And you need to have a proper presentation of your business. Websites is a great option, especially as I'll hopefully cover. People are looking for virtual options. They first will search you on the internet, then they'll go to Facebook, or they'll start on Facebook. So there's certain things that really can be credibility builders for you to have an online presence, as well as using different companies that are search engine optimizers that help with social media and things like that. And it's important, the last step is really just thinking about your financial future. So I'll go into these in a little bit more detail. So specifically, focusing on your dream and your vision. Early on, we talked about your business plan. Okay, we didn't revisit that just because of the content. It wasn't technically part of the curriculum as far as formulating the business plan. I do have more resources to help you with that if you want to take that step or challenge the business plan that you already created, because you really do need that niche. But drive is important, and understand any failure, setback, or frustration is a launching pad to actually help you in the goal, to help you achieve your goal. So if you see everything as an opportunity, then you're never going to be frustrated. You're never going to be disappointed. You're going to say, this wasn't what I expected, but oh, I see the value in this. And I see how I actually, I was expecting this, I got this. But just like Chelsea said, I personally believe that God will bring to you exposure to what you need to help who you need to help at that time. So if you see it as an opportunity and not frustrated because it's not the way that you thought it was going to be, just in life as a general rule, I have found that you're going to go faster to reaching your goal. So you do need to find out if you can practice legally in your state. That's just common sense. And here's some specifics. There are different entities called dietitians and naturopathic physicians. Those are different than traditional naturopaths. I highlighted that very briefly when we were talking about all the different types of practitioners. They can prescribe medication. Dietitians have their own certification and they have their own recommendations, and oftentimes it's based on the medical perspective. So if you are considering to be trained as a CNC, a ND, you need to understand that the following 27 states require no license. And as Melissa pointed out, that's actually to your advantage because you can be regulated. MDs, you need to understand this. You have a distinct advantage over MDs because they have certain standards of care and certain regulations that they have to follow that. Many MDs that have gone against the grain and decided to recommend natural protocols have been prosecuted and even to the point of death threats and worse. So you don't have that because you don't have that required licensing aspect. So that is a benefit. It's not a drawback. It's really not if you understand it the way that it really is. So here's a specific book, Unlicensed Practitioners by Dr. Lawrence Wilson. It's only $15 on Amazon. Strongly encourage you to get that resource. And you have to have them sign the disclaimer and understand what your scope is. As a person who has a comprehensive and alternative health practitioner certification, you are not a licensed practitioner.
Natural
You
health
are not
practitioner
a
certification.
registered practitioner. With a certification, most associations are not going to say that that's enough schooling to register you. I'm mostly familiar with INHP, International Association of Natural Health Practitioners, and there's a specific qualification for registration. And that gives you accountability as well as another credibility builder, as well as you have access to they put you on their directory so clients can find you through their resources.
Natural health practitioner professional diploma video-based program allows you to be registered with INHP.
And these are those board certification sources. But it is important to have that end game where, depending on your client, understand the limitations of a certification. Okay, understand that there may be certain clients that would gravitate, you would attract them more if you had, for example, the natural health practitioner professional program that allows you to register, especially with INHP, which is a double credibility builder because of the directory factor and because there's a process, there's an application where they verify all your information. It's kind of like Better Business Bureau, where when you have that on your website, people are like, oh, it's BBB certified or listed, AAA rated or whatever it is. That's the same thing with the association. So look into this and have an end game approach. I strongly recommend that because it really will. I have the advantage, obviously, of the doctorate, where the reality is people will listen to me because of that piece of paper. But what you need to understand at the end, I'll mention this, you are much more than a degree. You're much more than a piece of paper. You have your passion. You have your knowledge. And I became a doctor the day I was told to go on disability and give up hope. I didn't have a piece of paper, but I had a passion and I had research, and I was already more qualified than a lot of the practitioners that I may have seen after that point or before that point, in my humble opinion, because of the research that I've done. So you have that same thing already. All of you are more qualified than many practitioners out there. So don't you dare think that you're an imposter. Don't you dare think you're not qualified. All of you have everything that you need just by showing up and proving to me that you're willing to work and actually become a truth seeker and never settle for less than excellence for your clients. So this is a program that's coming up September 14th for New Eden. The 14
You're in it now.
courses that you have taken are part of it. They are going to be restructured, and it's a video-based format that's not interactive, but we're looking at an interactive video format where there are quizzes and things like that. So you may even qualify if you've taken some of those classes, which this also goes into functional medicine in a whole course. It goes into herbology, it goes into 5G, EMF, it goes into other things in more depth because it is a professional diploma. So as far as a credential, it's a step up from a certification. So something for you to consider. Liability insurance does give you
You
the
guys already
extra
considered it.
coverage that you need in case there is a legal situation. Again, it rarely happens, but it's good to be covered. When you incorporate, as I mentioned, it protects your personal assets. So there are different ways to incorporate. There's an LLC, there's an S Corp, there's other ways of looking at this. You need to have an expert in the form of an accountant who really can advise you, whether it's a sole proprietorship, LLC, or whatever will protect you the most based on the business that you want. But corporations in general really tend to have more formalities where you have to have quarterly minutes and things like that. I use an S Corp. I found that my accountant advised me when I was setting things up, and I found that is the best for lots of reasons for my situation. But you need to look at your options, as well as when you incorporate. For example, my business is True Wellness Inc. And for whatever reason, that Inc. actually being incorporated does actually create more legitimacy in my client's eyes as a entity. Okay, so just something to consider. I think that you could do it either way, but again, if there's things that make sense to you after you do your research and have qualified people giving you their opinion based on their area of expertise, which really is more of an accounting aspect, that's usually why people pick certain entities, is because of the protection to your assets and the tax advantages. But it also, again, does help, like I said, legally and brand building and marketing. As well, here's another aspect. For example, for an S Corp, I am the president, and I don't have to be in my practice for my practice to exist. So the ownership and the management can change. So that's where, if you're looking to scale, where you have, whether it's multiple franchises or whatever, having an entity can be beneficial. As well as I mentioned, tax flexibility. So an LLC is taxed at the same rate as a sole proprietor while providing limited exposure to personal liabilities. But profit and loss typically pass through the LLC and get reported on the personal income tax returns of the owners. But they can also elect to be taxed as a corporation. So again, this is more accounting than it is really natural health advice, but you need to know this. So definitely you need to understand that there's a different tax frame. And as far as payroll, like for me, if I am going to be working in my office, then I need to have payroll for my salary. So it is sometimes extra work to have these entities as S Corps and things like that in the beginning. But when you have things rolling, it can save you a lot of money and have that added protection. So that's why here the corporation can avoid double taxation of corporate profits and dividends by electing subchapter S tax status. That's the S Corp. Then again, both corporations and LLCs may deduct normal business expenses, including salaries, before they allocate income to owners. So again, you do need an expert in these arenas to guide you properly, but this is just a brief overview. Obviously, renting or purchasing, you need to look at the numbers and see what makes the most sense. Long term, sometimes purchasing is a better deal. Other times, renting, even with our current economic climate, maybe not locking into some long-term contract because there is some fluctuation that may occur related to, you know, the whatever, the second wave of COVID or whatever. There's some things that we learned from this COVID situation that I'm gonna highlight at the end of this talk, so you understand how to prepare yourself as a practitioner. And one of those might be looking at different options in addition to renting or purchasing an office. Although those can be very beneficial, I still work out of a physical location as well as virtually and other platforms that I use. So it's good to have options. So when you specialize, people want experts. So that is very advantageous. And having someone who can help you, like a search engine optimization expert who even does your website, like eBrands. We have some links here. So they can also handle social marketing, social media platforms. I have some other concepts for that where you might not need as much of the marketing that they say, you know, put in hours on YouTube and all that. That might not be essential depending on how you want to practice, where you can develop and have your target market attracted to you through very simple approaches. Networking, we just talked about how community is essential. So having free lectures is a great idea. Business cards, health food stores, free consultations. What I've done also, I don't do it as much recently, but having corporate wellness programs. In addition to your target specialty, you can offer yourself as an expert in corporate wellness. That's a niche. So you can do that as an adjunct also, because then you get clients from that within your target market, as well as businesses get money from the government oftentimes to pay for wellness programs. So you can make boku bucks doing that. And association. So professional websites are critical. You need to make sure that you are doing that. And we recommend two sources, webs.com and GoDaddy for premium host sites or providers. And there's you can get someone who's, this is their area. So again, the point of a search engine optimization company is so that people are searching and you're on the first page. So hiring companies that will accomplish that can be very beneficial. I know a lot of doctors that's how they get a lot of their clients for first consultations. And there are different price structures that you need to look at, but visibility and Google searches and things like that can be one way of attracting clients. So this is something that this book recommends. And that's a company that I believe we have, New Eden has a direct experience with. So again, when you are looking, you want to find resources that will list you. And I've even used HealthProfs. It's healthprofessionals.com, and all scopes of practice, whether you're a nutritionist, a complementary and alternative health practitioner, or somebody with a PhD or an ND or a DC, all arenas are on this website and they search for you, and it's really listed very high in visibility. So that's been very beneficial for colleagues of mine and myself. These are some other resources that you can look up. All of them are very beneficial, so I encourage you to definitely look those up. And you do need to have that 10-year plan, like I talked about in one of the first classes, where you are focused on your legacy. You're focused on your impact. You're focused on what am I going to actually leave, you know, in the event that anything happens to my spouse or children. And that's where there's another resource that I want to introduce you to. I believe it's on the next phase, but it's something that I have actually found very beneficial. It's a form of insurance where there's different benefits that are really good for practitioners. If for some reason you're running your own business and there's an injury, it's an accident coverage, I believe. But there is an expert that I use and that many of my colleagues use that really you should contact him to get information about that particular rider or coverage. But obviously health insurance, this course does recommend and say it's a must, as well as looking at 401ks, mutual funds. So all the financial aspect. The reality is that most of our society, including practitioners, are not financially literate, okay? We are not taught how to budget. We're not taught how to create a financial plan. That's where you need a resource, and Bruce Haynes is one of those guys that has helped me, number one, see the importance of being a good steward of what I've been given. So it's great to be generous and have charities as well as income-based care where there's economic hardship applications and things like that. But sometimes when you're very passionate, you can develop what I used to have, which was a friendship practice, which was pay me if you want. I just want to help you. You know, it's up to you. That's fine. Because I, you know, like I said, I was in the social services and I was paid by a salary, and I never thought about creating income and profit. But as a businessman, you have to think about that. As a businesswoman, you have to think about that. So that's where having staff or a good financial advisor to help you understand that you have a responsibility, that you actually, if you are not being a good steward and charging appropriate fees for your level of expertise, your experience, your knowledge, if you're not valuing yourself, you are actually not stewarding what God has given you. Okay, so that's a lot of you have mentioned that, you know, you're concerned about the financial breakdown and how to charge for services and all of that. But one thing I will tell you is that hooking up with Bruce helped me, as well as other people that I've hooked up with, having financial mentors, helped me understand that not only do I need to provide for my family and create a legacy, but there is a perceived value based on how much you think your services are worth, as well as how much you understand that there is a seed time and harvest principle. So you need to create the right fee structure. And that's a whole nother, that's really more of the mentorship option that I offer. But Bruce Haynes is somebody that you should look at not only for life insurance, but all aspects, whether it's health insurance, whether it's that rider that I talked about for accidents. He has something with me where literally, if I get hurt and go to the emergency room, I'll get a check in the mail. Okay, not only will everything, as far as I understand, be covered, but I'll get a check in the mail. So if there's an accident, I'll get a check. So there's many things that he has access to that I never even heard of until I actually set up that issue. So very useful resource. I wanted to make sure you guys had that.
So that is the end of section 2 in business strategies.